There are nights history simply refuses to walk past, nights that look peaceful on the surface, but if you listen closely, you can almost hear something holding its breath behind the curtain. In this video, we're going to one of those nights. The night when a simple wooden horse became the deadliest military trick of the ancient world. But this isn't just a famous story. Behind it lie 3 black holes. 3 moments when the Greeks were a step away from destruction, yet each time they came back with a tactic no one expected. From a path no army dared to approach, to an island believed to be unbeatable, and to a night when Troy thought the war was finally over, and just when everyone believed it was all finished. If you want to see how a deception plan can change the future of a civilization, watch this video to the end. For 10 whole years, the Greeks stayed behind the walls of Troy. The hot winds of the plain, the smell of blood, and the sound of hammers striking armor in the distance had become part of their daily life. Every dawn, hundreds of men charged toward the walls, and every dusk, hundreds of bodies were left on the ground. That war no longer looked like a war. It had become a swamp. Each side was tired enough of blood, but no one was willing to say, "Enough!" In the Greek camp, whispers had begun. The soldiers said the gods favored Troy. Some were talking about returning home, and at the center of this chaos sat a man no one understood what he was thinking about. Odysseus. He wasn't the strongest warrior, nor the most famous, but the most dangerous mind there belonged to him. That night, as the wind blew from the sea and the sound of waves mixed with the groans of wounded soldiers, Odysseus was thinking of just one thing. How do you defeat an enemy that fears no attack? To him, the wall of Troy wasn't unbreakable. It was the mind of the soldiers behind it that had to be broken. This is the moment most historians overlook, the point where the war moved from the ground to the mind. Odysseus realized that to conquer Troy, he had to destroy the enemy's belief, not just their gates. Those days, the Greeks had burned thousands of supplies, lost dozens of forts, but they still had one thing: time. And Odysseus used time as a weapon. Instead of attacking, he retreated. Instead of threatening, he went silent. And it was exactly this silence that planted fear in the heart of Troy. Because when your enemy threatens you, you can prepare. But when he goes silent, all you can do is guess, and nothing eats a king's mind like guessing. That night, Odysseus designed a plan no strategist in history has ever forgotten. But it was still just a spark. A dangerous idea that if even one person revealed it, everything would be over. He wanted to force the enemy to open the gates themselves. And starting the next morning, everything was going to change. Two days after that strange retreat, the Greek camp looked like a ghost town. The fires were out, the tents half empty, and only the Greek flag swaying silently in the wind. But behind that silence, the heart of a plan was beating. Odysseus, along with a few of his trusted commanders, had gathered in the shadow of a broken mast. On the ground, a rough sketch had been drawn with charcoal. Not the design of a fortress or an attack route, but the outline of an animal. Something no one expected. A horse, but not a horse, a trap. One of the commanders, a man who had fought for 10 years, shouted angrily, "We came here to fight, not to do carpentry. This is nonsense, Odysseus." But Odysseus' reply was calm and heavy. "We fought for 10 years. Enough. Now is not the time for fighting. It's time for thinking." In his mind, this was not just a statue. It was a message that had to say exactly what the enemy wanted to hear. "We lost. This is a divine offering. We are gone." But beneath that simple layer, a complex technical strategy was hidden. That's why Odysseus divided his plan into 3 parts. Odysseus knew that the people of Troy were thirstier for meaning than anything else. They had resisted for 10 years, so their minds were searching for confirmation that said, "We are the best, we are the best, we are the chosen ones of the gods." So a gift of spoils, a gift of the Greeks' defeat, was exactly the kind of pleasure Troy's mind wanted. A psychological reinforcement, a mental bait. Odysseus always said, "When the enemy wants you strong, show him you're weak. When he wants you weak, prove to him you're defeated." The horse was not just a box. It was a hidden military unit. Inside the horse, space had to be created so that 30 elite men could hide in it. But the big problem was this. If even one plank moved with the wrong sound, the guards would become suspicious. So Odysseus used carpenters who carved the wood, bit by bit, with architectural precision. The layers had to be arranged so that each footsteps would be muffled, air could enter sufficiently, or the weight of the horse wouldn't become too heavy. This was an engineering project, not a wooden statue. Every hammer strike had to be done at night, far from the sight of Troy's guards. The soldiers chosen to hide inside the horse were selected. The swiftest, the quietest, and the fiercest warriors of Greece. The biggest part of the plan wasn't the wooden horse. It was the absence of the army. Odysseus wanted the Greeks to disappear, not flee, not retreat. At night, 10,000 men withdrew from the shore and hid behind small sea islands. But on the shore, they left extinguished fires and abandoned armor, as if they had lost hope and simply left. All of Troy saw exactly this the next morning. An empty shore, an abandoned camp, and a strange gift. But there was a dangerous point here. The entire plan had a single point of failure. If even one defender of Troy started thinking, "This horse is too big. Why?" Or if even one Greek soldier had sneezed, or if a single plank had rattled the wrong way, the entire Greek army would have been destroyed in the worst possible way. 30,000 men would have been trapped in their own ambush. For this reason, on the last night before the operation, Odysseus walked along the shore. The wind was blowing from the direction of the city, and under his breath he said, "War doesn't end with a sword. It ends with judgment." And tomorrow, Troy was about to make a wrong judgment that changed history. On the morning the horse was found, the gates of Troy were more crowded than ever. People poured out of every street toward the shore like a wave. After 10 years of war, everyone was looking for a sign, even if that sign was the strangest thing on earth. The horse, a wooden giant, with a polished body and wheels that looked like they were never meant to move. Children were running around it. Merchants joked, laughing. "See? We told you the Greeks couldn't endure." And the soldiers? The soldiers were the most afraid, but no one dared say it out loud. Because in war, fear is always the last thing anyone admits. The first person who dared to object was an old man with a white beard and priestly clothes. Cassandra, the seer. The one who years ago said Paris should not abduct Helen, and no one listened. He struck his staff hard on the ground and shouted, "This is not a gift from the gods. This is a trap." The Greeks never retreat without a reason. People laughed. "There he goes again." He complained for 10 years straight. But behind Cassandra's gaze, There was a kind of tremor, a real tremor, a feeling that came from experience, not superstition. But the problem was this: humans only believe the prophecies that benefit them. In the midst of the commotion, one of the senior soldiers tried to inspect the horse up close. He struck the wooden body with his spear. A tock sound, not very loud, not very muffled. A suspicious sound, neither the sound of solid wood nor that of ordinary hollow wood. He frowned. This doesn't have a normal structure. There's something inside it. But before he could finish his sentence, a high-ranking politician grabbed his shoulder and said, "We won. Why are you looking for a problem?" This was exactly where Odysseus' tactic worked. Pride was Greece's best weapon, because the truth is, when people look for confirmation, they no longer look for the truth. By noon, all of Troy was arguing. Burn the horse? Open the gates and bring it in? Or leave it abandoned on the shore? A great council was held. Soldiers were anxious. The people were excited. The politicians were proud. And the king was stuck between all three. In the end, the decision was simple. Simple, but wrapped in 1,000 beautiful justifications. It's a gift of peace, a sign of favor from the gods. The war is over. And with that, the giant gates of Troy slowly opened, with a sound no one that day understood. But the Greeks, miles away, heard it clearly. We accept. The horse was pulled forward with dozens of ropes. Its wheels scraped loudly against the stone, and the men hidden inside its wooden belly held their breath with every jolt. For the first time in 10 years, Greece was inside the impenetrable walls of Troy, though no one knew yet. The spell was only half broken. The other half would break at night. It was a quiet night. One of those nights when you feel the world has finally decided to smile. The remains of the celebration fires still glowed faintly at the corners of the square, and Troy's exhausted soldiers, after 10 long years of war, slept for the first time without their armor. No one knew that right in the middle of the city, inside a giant wooden structure, something was holding its breath. Something that, had they known, would have turned that night into the last celebration of their life. Hours had passed since the horse had been brought in. The guards had circled it several times, tapped the wooden body with their spear tips, listened closely, but nothing. They were convinced it was just a keepsake, a symbol, maybe even a strange gift from an enemy who had finally accepted defeat. But inside that cramped, suffocating darkness, about 40 soldiers, the finest of the Greeks, sat like statues, motion, cramped legs, heartbeats so loud they feared the wood might echo them, not daring to take a full breath. And that silence, that absolute stillness, was the most precise part of Odysseus' plan, an attack whose starting move was doing nothing. The seams of the horse were designed to swallow sound. The double-layered body softened every hit, and the inner floor was covered with thick fabric, so no movement could be detected. Troy never realized that beneath all this silence lay an extremely meticulous idea. No miracle, no lucky chance, but a perfectly engineered trick. When the sky was fully dark and the echoes of celebration faded, one of the soldiers inside gently pushed the hidden hatch. A tiny crack of wood, so soft the wind swallowed it. He peered through the gap. The streets were empty. Torches had burned halfway down. Only the faint, distant footsteps of a lone guard could be heard. He lowered a short rope from the opening, and the soldier waiting outside the city climbed up quietly. Moments later, the first Greek set foot on the stones inside Troy, and still, no one knew that this tiny sound was the beginning of the end. One by one, the warriors climbed down. Odysseus had already assigned every detail. One group to silently eliminate the guards, another to open the massive gates. The operation moved forward without pause, without speech, only hand signals. A guard who should have lived until dawn didn't even get the chance to shout. Each strike was with a short dagger, clean, precise, from behind and unnoticed. When the gates finally opened, the second part of the plan awakened. The forces the Greeks had pretended to sail away were waiting in the dark. Once the gates opened, they rushed in like a flood. No one in Troy was armed. No one was ready, because no city expects a war after a night of celebration. Minutes later, the first houses were burning, and the first screams filled the air. Troy fell, not because the enemy was strong, not because its walls were weak, but because of the simple mistake: celebrating victory too soon. The horse, instead of a gift of peace, became the deadliest weapon the city had ever known. That night, Troy learned in flames that sometimes the real enemy is not outside the walls, but in the decisions made with a smile. And this is where the Trojan War finally took its last breath. A city that once believed its walls could never crack fell to the simplest trick in history. But the truth buried beneath the ashes of this story was never just about a wooden horse. Most of history has been shaped by one small mistake, one misplaced moment of trust, or a quiet little thought like, "You're not that tired, go to sleep." No civilization was ever destroyed by the sword. They were destroyed by comfort. The Greeks won, but not with strength. They won with patience, with failure after failure, with plans that collapsed 10 times and finally worked on the 11th. That's the real lesson hidden inside this war. No victory exists without passing through a few black holes, and no defeat is ever sudden. There is always a warning before the fall. If this 4-chapter journey gave you something, if for a moment it made you see the world through the eyes of a commander, a messenger, or even a tired soldier, then stay with us. Subscribe, because the next videos are just like this. Great stories built on strategy, mistakes, genius, and sometimes just a very human decision. The world is full of battles that have never been told. Troy's story ends here, but our journey is just beginning.